7 top 10 singles in 2 years, sold-out concerts from coast to coast. The Lovin Spoonful conquered America with sunshine harmonies and good time rock that defined the 60s. Then, federal agents kicked down John Sebastian's door at dawn. Zalyanovsky got deported. The bass player vanished into witness protection, and the hits stopped forever. This is what really happened when the summer of love turned into a nightmare of narcotics, betrayal, and the systematic destruction of one of America's most beloved bands. Picture 4 kids from Greenwich Village in 1965. John Sebastian, 21 years old, harmonica in his pocket, sleeping on Washington Square benches. Zalyanovsky, fresh from Canada, guitar case full of pawn shop tickets. Steve Boone, dropping out of college, telling his parents he'd rather starve playing bass. Joe Butler, working construction by day, drumming in strip clubs until 4 in the morning. They had nothing but talent and hunger. Within 18 months, they'd have 7 singles in the top 10. Within 3 years, they'd be finished. The music business doesn't just break hearts. It shatters souls, destroys friendships, and leaves corpses in its wake. The Lovin Spoonful learned this lesson in blood, handcuffs, and exile. Their story isn't unique. It's the same tragedy that's destroyed 1,000 bands before and since, but understanding their specific annihilation might save you from your own. Subscribe to Rock and Roll True Stories for the music history they don't want you to know. The Village in '65 was America's creative furnace. Bob Dylan had just gone electric 3 blocks from where Sebastian was crashing on couches. The Bitter End, Cafe Wha, Gerda's Folk City. These weren't venues, they were proving grounds where careers lived or died nightly. Sebastian came from money, but chose poverty. His father wrote harmonica instruction books. His godparents were Woody Guthrie and Leadbelly. Music wasn't his career choice, it was genetic destiny. But destiny doesn't pay rent. He was pawning harmonicas to eat, playing backup for whoever would throw him $20, watching Dylan explode while he scraped by on session work. Then he met Zalman Yanovsky at Cass Elliott's basement apartment. Canadian wild man, jazz guitarist father, classical violinist mother, expelled from multiple schools, deported from Israel for stealing a motorcycle. Yanovsky played guitar like he was possessed. Sebastian had never heard anything like it. They jammed until sunrise. Within a week, they were writing songs. Within a month, they had a sound nobody had ever heard. Folk meets rock meets jug band meets magic. They called it good time music. The industry would call it gold. But first, they needed a rhythm section and money, and somewhere to sleep besides park benches and borrowed floors. Rock and roll dreams don't manifest from talent alone. They require collision with opportunity. That collision was coming. February 1965. The Beatles had just conquered America. The Stones were climbing the charts. Record labels were desperate for the next British invasion, except homegrown. Sebastian and Yanovsky were playing basket houses in the Village, literally passing a basket for donations, making $12 on a good night. Steve Boone showed up one night with his bass. Long Island kid, father wanted him to be an accountant, dropped out of Villanova to play music. His parents cut him off completely. He was living on peanut butter sandwiches and tap water. But when he plugged in that bass and locked in with Joe Butler's drums, something alchemical happened. 4 musicians became one sound. They could feel it. Everyone in that basement could feel it. The Lovin Spoonful was born in that moment, though they didn't have the name yet. They were sleeping in Yanovsky's van, pooling coins for coffee, playing anywhere that would have them. The Cafe Wha gave them a residency, $15 a night split 4 ways. They played 6 sets a night, 7 nights a week. Their fingers bled, their voices went raw. But something was building. The crowds grew from 10 people to 50 to standing room only. Word was spreading through the Village like wildfire. These kids had something special. Eric Jacobson heard about them, producer for Tim Hardin, connected to everyone who mattered. He came to see them on a Tuesday night. Jacobson stood in the back of the Café Wa for exactly 3 songs. Then he walked straight to the stage. "You guys free tomorrow? I want to cut a demo." They recorded Do You Believe in Magic in one take at Columbia Studios. Cost $200 that Jacobson fronted himself. The tape made its way to Kama Sutra Records within 48 hours. Artie Ripp, the label owner, didn't even finish listening to the song. He called Jacobson immediately. How much do they want? The contract was for $10,000 advance, split 4 ways, minus manager fees, minus producer points, minus everything else. Each member got about $1,500. It was more money than any of them had ever seen. Yanofsky bought a new guitar. Sebastian got his harmonicas out of pawn. Boone called his parents to say he'd made it. Butler quit his construction job. They had no idea they'd just signed their lives away. The contract gave Kama Sutra rights to everything: publishing, merchandising, their name, their souls. Standard music business slavery disguised as opportunity, but they were 21 years old and had been eating peanut butter for months. The lawyers Kama Sutra recommended said it was a great deal. Of course they did. Those lawyers were getting paid by the label. The trap was set. The countdown to destruction had begun. Do You Believe in Magic hit the charts in September 1965. It rocketed to number 9. The follow-up, You Didn't Have to Be So Nice, hit number 10. Then came Daydream. Number 2, kept out of the top spot only by the Beatles. Then, Did You Ever Have to Make Up Your Mind? Number 2 again. Summer in the City, their masterpiece. Number 1 for 3 weeks in the dead heat of 1966. You could hear it from every transistor radio in America. 7 top 10 hits in under 2 years. They were making more money than they could count, except they weren't. The checks went to Kama Sutra. The band got advances against future royalties that would never materialize. Standard music business mathematics. The label claimed recording costs, promotion costs, tour support costs, costs for things that never existed. By the time Summer in the City was number 1, the band members were taking home about $3,000 a month each. The song was generating $50,000 a week. Where was the money going? Into Kama Sutra's pockets, into mob-connected distribution deals, into everyone's hands except the 4 kids who created the magic. They were too busy touring to notice. 200 shows in 1966 alone, living on buses, speed to stay awake, bourbon to come down, playing until their hands went numb. Success was killing them by degrees. Yanofsky was homesick, depressed, self-medicating with everything he could find. Sebastian's voice was shredding from constant touring. Boone had developed bleeding ulcers from the stress and speed. Butler was drinking a 5th of whiskey a day just to deal with the schedule, but the real poison was already in their bloodstream. May 1966, San Francisco, the Fillmore Auditorium, 3,000 kids screaming for more. Yanofsky and Boone decided to score some pot after the show. The dealer they found was a federal informant. The buy went down in a hotel room wired for sound. Within minutes of exchanging $40 for 2 ounces of marijuana, federal agents burst through the door. The nightmare wasn't the arrest, it was what came next. The agents separated Yanofsky and took him to a federal building. They laid it out simple. Yanofsky wasn't an American citizen. Drug conviction meant automatic deportation. His career would be over. The Lovin Spoonful would be finished. Or he could cooperate, give them names, become an informant himself. They had him cold on the buy. The tape was clear. Yanofsky broke. He gave them a name, not a dealer, not someone dangerous. He gave them the name of the kid who'd introduced him to the dealer, the kid who'd tried to help them score. Yanofsky flew back to New York in silence. He told nobody what had happened, not Sebastian, not the lawyers, not even his girlfriend. The weight of his betrayal was crushing him from the inside. Meanwhile, the band kept touring, kept recording, kept pretending everything was perfect. But Yanofsky was disintegrating. He'd show up to sessions drunk. He'd miss rehearsals. He was paranoid that everyone knew what he'd done. The music was suffering. The chemistry was gone. Then came the call everyone had been dreading. The kid Yanofsky had named had been arrested, facing 5 years federal time for marijuana distribution based on Yanofsky's testimony. When the news broke in the underground press, the Lovin Spoonful became pariahs overnight. The same hippie community that had elevated them now wanted them dead. Death threats poured in. Concert promoters canceled shows. Radio stations pulled their records. The band that had defined good time music was now the face of everything the counterculture hated: narcs, snitches, sellouts. The transformation from heroes to villains took less than a week, but the destruction was just beginning. Yanofsky couldn't take it anymore. He quit the band in June 1967, fled to Canada, changed his name, disappeared. The Lovin Spoonful replaced him, but it was like replacing someone's heart with a clock. Sebastian tried to hold things together, but his soul was gone. The magic had been a four-way chemical reaction. Remove one element and you get nothing but smoke. They released more singles, but they barely charted. The concerts that had been sellouts were now half-empty rooms. Kama Sutra was squeezing them for more albums to fulfill the contract. Sebastian was writing desperately, but every song sounded hollow. The joy was gone. The innocence was murdered. Then Steve Boone got arrested. Marijuana possession. The cops had been watching all of them since the Yanofsky scandal broke. Boone faced prison time. His lawyer made a deal. Boone would become an informant too. The spiral was complete. The band built on peace and love was now a network of federal snitches. Sebastian couldn't take it anymore. He quit in 1968, walked away from everything. The name, the royalties, the catalog, just wanted out. Joe Butler tried to keep the Lovin Spoonful going with replacement members. It was pathetic. Like watching someone perform CPR on a skeleton. They played smaller and smaller venues, state fairs, amusement parks, oldies revivals where they were the youngest act on the bill. The band that had helped define the 60s was now a nostalgia act before the decade even ended. The money disappeared as fast as the fame. Kama Sutra claimed the band owed them hundreds of thousands in unrecouped advances. The publishing rights were tangled in lawsuits. Sebastian was practically living as a hermit in Woodstock. He'd emerge occasionally to play small folk clubs under assumed names. Yanofsky was in Canada, working as a chef, pretending he'd never been famous. Boone was dealing with the feds. His ulcers had gotten so bad, he'd been hospitalized twice. Butler was playing drums for anyone who would hire him. $50 a night in bars where nobody remembered his name. The Lovin Spoonful had generated millions of dollars in revenue. The four members were essentially broke. This is how the music business has always worked. The artists create the value, the business steals it, the contracts make it legal, the drugs make it bearable, until they don't. Then comes the collapse, the betrayals, the bankruptcies, the bitter aftermath where everyone pretends it was nobody's fault. But it's always somebody's fault. Usually, it's everybody's fault. The artists for being naive, the labels for being predatory, the drugs for being there, the money for corrupting everything it touches. Yanofsky died of a heart attack in 2002. He was 57 years old, living in Kingston, Ontario, running a restaurant called Chez Piggy. He'd rebuilt his life completely away from music, never spoke about the Lovin Spoonful in interviews. The guilt from his betrayal never left him. His daughter said he'd wake up screaming from nightmares about it even 30 years later. Steve Boone found peace teaching music to kids in Florida. He's in his 70s now, still dealing with the physical damage from those years of speed and stress. His stomach is held together with scar tissue and prayer. Joe Butler still tours as the Lovin Spoonful, playing casinos and cruise ships. He owns the name now after decades of legal battles. He performs the hits to rooms full of gray-haired people who remember when those songs meant everything. It's not sad, it's something worse, it's ordinary. This is how most rock stories end, not with dramatic deaths or phoenix-like resurrections, just old men playing old songs to old audiences while the real money flows to corporations that own the publishing. John Sebastian survived, still plays music, still writes. But he never talks about those years without his voice changing. You can hear the scar tissue in his words. The Lovin Spoonful was supposed to be about joy. The bitter irony is that the music survived everything that destroyed the men who made it. Summer in the City still gets played 1 million times every summer. Do You Believe in Magic? Still soundtracks, commercials, and movies. The songs generate hundreds of thousands in royalties every year. The band members see almost none of it. The publishing rights are owned by a consortium that bought them from Kama Sutra's bankruptcy proceedings in the 80s. Some investment firm in Manhattan is getting rich off songs about peace and love written by kids who ended up as federal informants. This is the music business stripped of its mythology. Young talent gets discovered, exploited, destroyed, and discarded while their work becomes an eternally generating cash machine for people who can't play a note. It happened to the Lovin Spoonful. It happened to 1,000 bands before them. It's happening right now to some kid with a guitar and a dream who just signed a deal he doesn't understand. The only difference is the drugs. Used to be speed and pot. Now it's Xanax and fentanyl. The contracts are the same. The betrayals are the same. The destruction is the same. Only the pills change. Subscribe to Rock and Roll True Stories. Learn from the corpses of dreams. What makes the Lovin Spoonful's destruction particularly American is how fast it happened. 2 years from Washington Square benches to #1 records. 1 year from top of the world to federal informants. 6 months from that to complete collapse. In England, bands fell apart over decades. In America, we do it efficiently. We build them up faster, burn them out completely, and move on to the next sacrifice. The Lovin Spoonful was the perfect 60s band because they embodied the whole decade's trajectory, innocence to experience to corruption to collapse. They started as folk singers with electric dreams and ended as cautionary tales with criminal records. Their 7 top 10 singles weren't just hits. They were a countdown to destruction, each one taking them higher while the foundation crumbled beneath them. By the time Summer in the City hit #1, the band was already dead. They just didn't know it yet. The music was an autopsy of American dreams performed while the body was still warm. That's why those songs still resonate. They're not about young love and sunny days. They're about the last moments before everything goes wrong. Listen to Do You Believe in Magic? Now, you can hear it. The desperation beneath the joy. The real tragedy isn't that the Lovin Spoonful fell apart. It's that their destruction was so predictable it might as well have been scripted. Take talented kids, make them desperate, offer them salvation through contracts they can't understand, work them until they break, introduce drugs to keep them going, create pressure until someone cracks. Then watch the dominoes fall: betrayal, arrest, collapse, bankruptcy, death, or obscurity. Rinse and repeat with the next batch of dreamers. The music business isn't about music, it's about business. The music is just the product. The musicians are just the machinery, and machines are meant to be used until they break, then replaced. The Lovin Spoonful understood this too late. They thought they were artists. They were actually inventory. They thought they were creating a new sound. They were actually creating intellectual property for Kama Sutra Records. They thought the contracts were the beginning of their careers. The contracts were carefully designed endings with delayed fuses, every clause a trap, every provision a bar in the cage. The lawyers knew. The label knew. Everyone knew except the 4 kids with guitars who just wanted to make music. John Sebastian wrote Summer in the City about the contrast between harsh reality and desperate dreams of escape. He had no idea he was writing about his own future. The hot town, summer in the city, back of my neck getting dirty and gritty. That was their career. The cool town, evening in the city, dressed so fine and looking so pretty. That was the illusion. All around, people looking half dead. Walking on the sidewalk, hotter than a match head. That was the truth nobody saw until it was too late. The Lovin Spoonful created the soundtrack to the summer of love while living through the winter of commerce. They sang about magic while drowning in contracts. They preached peace and love while becoming federal informants. The contradiction destroyed them. It had to. You can't serve two masters. You can't create joy while being systematically exploited. You can't maintain innocence in a business built on corruption. Something has to give. Usually it's the artists who break. The Lovin Spoonful broke completely. The music remains, a ghost of what could have been. 7 top 10 singles in 2 years. Then silence, then oldies circuits and cruise ships, then death and restaurants and teaching kids. 50 years later, their destruction still serves as a perfect template for how the music business consumes its young. Nothing has changed except the technology. Now it happens on social media instead of in Greenwich Village. Now the contracts are for streaming rights instead of vinyl pressing. Now, the drugs are prescribed instead of purchased from federal informants, but the pattern remains identical. Discovery, exploitation, destruction, replacement. The Lovin Spoonful was just one meal in the endless feast. Their bones were picked clean and discarded while their songs play on, generating money for strangers. This is what rock and roll really is when you strip away the romance. It's a meat grinder that turns human creativity into corporate profit. The Lovin Spoonful went in as 4 kids with a dream. They came out as hamburger. The music they left behind is just the blood on the floor. Beautiful blood, maybe. Blood that still moves people. But blood nonetheless. And there's always more where that came from. Always another band ready to sign their lives away. Always another dream ready to be monetized into nightmare. The question isn't why the Lovin Spoonful fell apart. The question is why anyone expects any different outcome. Show me a successful band, and I'll show you a tragedy in progress. Show me a #1 record, and I'll show you a countdown to destruction. Show me a music business contract, and I'll show you a suicide note with delayed activation. The Lovin Spoonful just had the misfortune of being talented enough to matter and naive enough to trust. They believed in magic. The business believed in money. Guess which belief system won? Hint, it's the one that still owns their publishing rights. It's the one that's still profiting from their destruction. It's the one that's preparing the same contracts for the next generation of dreamers. The Lovin Spoonful's story isn't unique, it's universal. It's happening right now in a rehearsal room somewhere. 4 kids with nothing but talent and hunger. They're about to make it, which means they're about to be destroyed.